what is the symbolism of the number of the beast? From movies about the Antichrist to speculation on modern developments, the number 666 has had a fearsome connotation as long as there's been a book of Revelation that's connected to the expectation of the rise of the Antichrist. But what exactly is that, which the author is referring to at the very end of chapter 13 when he says, a certain wisdom is needed because the number of the beast that its followers are stamped with stands for a certain name, and the number is 666. Well, a number of things can be looked at in terms of the number of the beast, and one of which is in the area of number symbolism. We've already seen earlier on how references to 3.5 years refers to the previous experience of persecution for the Jewish people and how it relates now for the persecutions of the Christian people. And when it comes to number symbolism, we look at, for example, the number 7, which is the symbol of perfection. Number 7 is the perfect number. Therefore, the number 6 is less than 7, less than perfect, so a symbol of imperfection. Groupings of 3 is also symbolic in its nature. And 3 gives an emphasis of something, so it's in many ways is the epitome of something. For example, in the book of the prophet Isaiah, when he's in the temple and he sees the angels carrying forth the image of God, God's throne, they cry, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts," a passage we recite every time we celebrate the Mass. And of course, the 3 references to holy, holy, holy would symbolize the epitome of holiness. Well, in this particular case, we have 1 less than 7, which is perfection, therefore 6 equals imperfection, and we have the number 6 3 times, 666, which would be 3 times imperfection, the epitome of imperfection. And so the number 6 appearing 3 times could simply be that while we are called to worship the God of heaven, the number of the beast is one who demands to be worshipped as God, is an imperfect person who is hardly worthy of our worship. And that imperfection is epitomized, and not only in the number 6, which is 1 less than perfection, but in 3 times imperfection, 666, the epitome of imperfection. Another way of looking at it is in terms of the numerical value, the sum total of the numeric value of a name, taking all the letters, either in Greek or in Hebrew, and especially in Hebrew, there was a numeric value that each letter of the alphabet had. You spell out the name and take the letter value of the entire name, and you'd have a numeric value for that name. And one suggestion as to what name equals 666 is Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, otherwise known as Caesar Nero, an emperor who had long since died, but was known for his persecution of the church, and, as did the other emperors, demanded to be worshipped as a god, and the Christians were among those who were required to offer worship to the emperor, and when they failed to do that, they were persecuted by the Roman society. Contrast that name, however, with what we will later see in the book of Revelation, a reference to the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Now, an author from Catholic Biblical Quarterly back in 1948 once suggested an interpretation that would contrast itself with the numeric value of 666. While the numeric value is not stated in that passage of the King of Kings riding in that final battle, a man named Patrick W. SKEHAN suggests that King of Kings and Lord of Lords has the numeric value of 777. So there again we see another possible contrast that we see in the book of Revelation, whereas the emperor is symbolized in a numeric value of 666, the epitome of imperfection. King of Kings and Lord of Lords may possibly equal a numeric value of 777, the epitome of perfection, 3 times perfection. Another way of looking at the number of the beast would be in the historical context, because the passage states that the followers of the beast were stamped on their right hand or on their forehead. And this perhaps calls to mind a Roman practice of soldiers who tattooed themselves with the name of their general on their wrist or other parts of their body. It could also be considered a parody of the Jewish practice, as we read in the book of Deuteronomy. And anytime, perhaps, if you've seen a child receiving their bar mitzvah, the law is bound to their wrist and kept as a pendant on their head. And here we are seeing how the followers of the beast are bound by their wrist or on their forehead with the number of the beast. So that too could be a parody of Jewish practice. Further, the book of Revelation states that one was not allowed, or the law did not allow a man to buy or sell anything unless he was first marked by the beast with the number that stands for his name. What this indicates is almost a kind of anti-Christian apartheid. They were not allowed to buy or sell anything unless they were marked. What could that mark have been? Well, it could be a certification that they had burnt incense to the emperor, that they had worshipped the beast, worshipped the emperor. And in many ways, the book of Revelation may be presenting an indictment of an anti-Christian economic discrimination, economic apartheid, in which those Christians who did not publicly acknowledge the emperor would not be allowed to buy or sell in the marketplace. And so that too is, at least in a historical context, could be the effect that we see of the number, a dedication to the beast, but also an anti-Christian apartheid or anti-Christian discrimination for those who would not worship the beast, burn incense in homage to the emperor, and acknowledging him as a semi-divine, if not outright, divine leader of Rome. Well, a great deal of focus and reflection has been made regarding the number of the beast, but not much has been spoken of or reflected upon the effect of the number, which in many ways I think is a more important thing to consider, because the effect can be the result of any number of things, not just the number of the beast, and that is where we see the effect of anti-Christian activity in its actions of persecuting the church. Going back a little bit, a few verses before the number of the beast is given, the book of Revelation states that the standards of the second beast did not allow a man to buy or sell anything unless he was first marked with the number that stands for the beast's name. Now, this could indicate any number of things in the ancient Roman Empire. For example, the requirement was that the emperor be worshipped as a god, something that no Christian would do. To do so would be to engage in a practice that was anti-Christian, completely contrary to the Christian faith. And worshiping the emperor could be something as simple as burning incense real briefly to an image of the emperor, or worshiping him in a much more elaborate ceremony. And the mark could be simply a bracelet that a person wore, or a card or certificate that they carried to certify that they had engaged in this pagan practice, which for Christians is anti-Christian, unchristian, contrary to the Christian faith. And so the effect of that number is if they did not carry some indication that they engaged in this anti-Christian behavior, then they would be excluded from the marketplace, a kind of anti-Christian discrimination or apartheid within Roman society. Even nowadays in, say, movies or writings having to do with the end time or the coming of the Antichrist, the number 666 is very prominent in some of these stories. But how often do we recognize the effect of the number of the beast rather than the number outright? How often do we see occasions throughout history and even in our modern times in current events in which secular progressive society is pressuring people of a Christian faith to embrace a value system or a practice or an institution that is contrary to their faith? And they bring upon them political pressure, legal pressure, social exclusion, and so on, because they will not engage in behavior that is contrary to the Christian faith or publicly accept or approve of value systems that are contrary to the Christian faith. And when they don't, then we see pressure, for example, say, to boycott companies, to close down shops, to ostracize people of a Christian faith because they hold on to traditional values, such as a traditional understanding of marriage, a traditional understanding of the sanctity of life. and because they don't adhere to a popular value system that is contrary to the Christian faith, then there is socio-political and economic pressure to exclude them from the marketplace. And so there could be many examples of where we see that today. Doesn't necessarily indicate the end of the world is coming or that the Antichrist is ready to descend upon the earth. But we certainly see examples of not simply the number of the beast, which could be any number of things, but the effect of that number, the effect of an insistence that people of a Christian faith embrace and at least publicly support a value system or institution or a practice that is contrary to the Christian faith, and as the book of Revelation says, not being allowed to buy or sell in the marketplace, a kind of discrimination, socio-political, economic exclusion, because they will not certify an anti-Christian value system or anti-Christian practice.